Please.
Calling the roll, Mr. Gallagher.
Here.
Ms. Baker.
Here.
Mr. Tuma.
Here.
Mr. Brady.
Here.
Ms. Conwell.
Here.
There's a quorum. Also like the record to reflect that Councilman Miller is in attendance.
Welcome, Mr. Miller, as usual. Public comment?
No, Mr. Chair, no one has signed in.
In your packets, we have the minutes of the November 19th meeting. If they're in order, I'll accept a motion in a second.
So move.
All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Thank you. There are no matters referred to the committee and miscellaneous. We'll do the, and it's first anyhow, Mike, Mr. Dever and his team's going to fill us in on the visitation area that the public defender was discussing and their new space, I believe, was that on the third floor of Courthouse Square?
Correct, Mr. Chair.
And Mike, if you could just quickly go through when we met over at the jail for the visitation, I think that's the committee's main focus.
Well, the visitation space, Michael Dever with the Department of Public Works. Yes, we met about a week and a half ago. I think it was over at jail on the third floor. We were talking with the warden was in attendance, and the sheriff, and chief of staff Mason was actually also there.
And T. Morales.
And T. Morales was there. So the space as it's currently configured isn't conducive to having private meetings with staff and whatnot. So we're working on the plan on to kind of divvy up the space so it is a little bit more conducive to individual meetings between a public defender and their client. And we're hopeful to have something fairly soon in place, which was, it talked about masonry walls and things like that. We think we might be able to do it on maybe in a cheaper fashion as opposed to masonry walls where they still have soundproofing and whatnot. So we're working through that as it is now. Mm-hmm. And I think, so I don't have a specific date of having that completed, but we were working closely with both the sheriff and the warden.
Right. The important thing is, and Jack Green representing the public defender was there. The important thing, at least to the council, was to make sure everybody's on the same page.
Yes.
Everybody that was anybody was in that room, and it seemed we all agreed as to what had to happen. The timeline, obviously, we're going to leave to you guys, the experts that build it, T. Morales. But it was important to have everybody listen to each other that this is what we want and this is how we want it. And it seemed everybody was in agreement. Yep. So I just thought it was important that you let the committee know that we are moving in that direction.
Yes. Yes, and it was very clear in that meeting, and I think everyone understands what needs to take place there. And you're right, all of the players were in the room at the time, and there was consensus to how to move forward with it. So that's what we will be doing. So maybe I can come back to the committee in the near future here mm-hmm. and give you an accurate timeline of when, at least partially, it's up and running. And,
right. Regarding this, are there any questions for Mr. Dever? I really appreciate the fact that you were there and that we could get this part of it at least to the point where we all agree what has to happen, and it seemed the right people were in the room, so I appreciate that.
Sure. The other item that you wanted to touch on also was the public defender. The public defender had come before during budget hearings and the request for additional dollars for capital improvements in his space. In turn, through those discussions, we've identified space within the third floor of Courthouse Square. There's been some relocation taking place with the sheriff's office of some personnel out of that space. And that space seems to, will be able to work for us. It's roughly 3,600 square feet. So we are working through the details of that right now so it accommodates the public defender and his additional staff people. At the same time, we are looking at doing some improvements to his other space also because their people are really up on back to back and on top of each other in their space. So we're trying to accommodate both this additional space and then doing some minor improvements to his space on the fourth floor. So we're hopeful. We have, when the public defender came before you, I think there was a dollar figure that was put out there around $450,000 was needed for improvements to that space. We have scaled that back significantly to roughly a quarter of what that overall request was. We're still fine tuning that number, and I just wanted to make sure Councilman Miller was aware of that. We're fine tuning that number now, and we're thinking it's around $125,000 for the improvements to that space.
And do we have a timeline?
We're hopeful that we're going to have him in on the 3rd floor in that space the sheriff vacated by the end of January.
Okay.
And then the other space, it's going to be a work in progress because we have to move people out to be able to go in and do some improvements there. But at least the 3,600 square feet will be available, and he'll be able to move. We're hopeful about 8 to 10 people down into that space.
Okay. Mr. Stanton actually just walked in. Mr. Stanton, we've been talking about you. You missed the one. Sir, if you just approach, I just want to fill you in where we were at on the visitation. I'm sure Mr. Green probably filled you in as to what we were doing. If he hasn't, I can. Did he?
I'm well aware, Councilman Gallagher, thank you. But
okay.
I met with Mr. Reimer this morning along with other individuals.
Yeah, and
Mr. Devers kept me well informed.
Great. So we're all in it.
Couldn't ask for more wonderful cooperation.
We're all on the same page, and we're getting there. So we put it in the capable hands of Mr. Dever.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Other questions any further for Mr. Dever regarding this? Yes, ma'am.
Through the chair to Director Devers, so I just want to be clear. The new space timeline is January 2020, around there sometime.
Yeah, towards the end of 2020, we hope to have some of the public defender's personnel down in that 3rd floor space.
Okay, and so that'll allow you to move them up so you can work on the improvements of the current space.
Yeah, so there's some improvements that we're talking about on the 4th floor. So we still need to hash that all out, but like I said, the overall cost when this was first discussed was in around 400.
So they're originally on the 4th floor now?
Yeah, actually they cover 3 floors. I think it is now 1, 2, and 4.
Okay, so Ralph is on the 3rd floor.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
She remembered. Yeah. Okay, anything further? We good? Okay, Mike, thank you. Sir, thank you. I see the sheriff's here. Our second item is the medical care at the county. I had originally thought I had requested that Metro be here. I did see Dr. Bruner and one of the Metro folks at an off-site meeting and asked them if they wouldn't be here for me, and they told us yesterday they can't make it. There was a kind of a conflict there. I'm going to wear the collar on this one, although I thought very direct in wanting them to be here, but we will schedule them for another time. But we still have the issue of these ambulance runs out of the jail to Metro and other various facilities. We need some updates. So does anybody have anything for us from the county side as to where we're at regarding this?
Good afternoon, Council.
Why, I don't have specific numbers, okay, unfortunately. I did put a call into Cleveland EMS as of yesterday. They've yet to get back to me to find out an exact number. As I said the last time I appeared in front of you all, our number of ER runs for this year was, as of November 30th, was 1,061 ER runs from the county jail. I'm trying to get a breakdown as to how many of those were by Cleveland EMS. I know that that's the number that Mr. Ed Gallick was, that he did a report on the EMS runs to the county jail. So I've yet to obtain an exact number on that, and I'd like an opportunity to be able to do so. So that's kind of where I'm at with this at this point.
I did see, and I can't recall who sent me the information, but we're almost at the end of the year, and we're going to be, from what I can recall, at least, not be kind and say 25% higher. Looks like we're way beyond that as far as runs. And it all seems to line up with Metro completely taking over the jail. Not necessarily ideally right like that, but it seems that when they got in there, things have become a lot more conducive to sending patients from the jail out. The costs, I recall, were well
Yes.
over, if not near $1 million.
Correct.
Where previous years were about $500,000. It's hard to have this discussion without the doctor available. I understand that. But does anybody have any information as to what actually is going on, someone that's in the jail?
And, you know, Mr. Gallagher, just to backtrack for one moment, that 1,061 number that I have as of November the 30th, it's my understanding, and I think there's a difference between what our numbers are and the numbers that Metro is keeping. I don't know if our number is skewed somehow, because they're saying that some of those are outpatient treatments that have gone out that are combined in that number. We're not tracking that as such. We're tracking this as actual ER runs, all right? And
Well, that's what
outpatient is tracked separately.
Well, okay, I understand the ER runs. That seems to be the bone of contention. What are outpatient runs?
Well, outpatient would be like if we have an inmate, just a brief example, let's say we have an inmate in custody that requires dialysis.
So they obviously
3 times a week. Okay, that would be, and Chief, you know, by all means, correct me if I'm wrong, that would be considered an outpatient run, or someone that needs to get a cast taken off. That would be an outpatient run, but generally, those people would be conveyed to the hospital by, they're done during the day, during business hours. They'd be conveyed to the hospital via our transport unit.
So that's not our issue, really.
Correct,
Okay.
yes. Yeah, you're right, Mr. Gallagher.
Questions for the sheriff? Yes, ma'am.
Through the chair to the sheriff, has the numbers decreased since Metro has been notified these ER runs are kind of over the top?
Well, all I can say for is I can't speak between now and our last committee meeting. I do know that over the last week, it seems like our number of hospital details have been down. I don't have an exact number. Usually we have about 5 people that are admitted into the hospital that are hospital details. This morning it was only 1. But again, I can't give you an exact number regarding that.
Okay, and in terms...
I can, I just don't have the number with me, Ms. Conwell.
in terms of the number figures that you just talked about, the outpatient, are you doing, since you don't have a difference, are you working on
Yes.
changing that?
Yeah, the chief and I spoke on our way over here this afternoon, and we're going to get to the bottom of as far as who's tracking what, because when these numbers are entered, they're also entered through our radio room into our CAD system. There's a CAD number pulled. So a lot of what's being entered depends on the dispatcher that's entering it. Hopefully they're entering it properly, outpatient versus ER runs, and they're not entering in that outpatient is into the CAD system as an ER, okay? Because again, that would skew that number in the end. So that's what we're working on right now.
Thank you.
Mr. Tuma.
Thank you, through the chair. Thanks for being here this afternoon. When Council President Brady and I did a tour of the facility,
Yes.
there was an area where we saw some Metro Health people, and it was almost like a triage, little mini, like almost like a mini MASH unit area is kind of what it looked like to me. Has there been any thought or consideration given to maybe making those some of the ER runs, just bringing people directly there instead of taking them off facility, off site, with the cost involved and that sort of thing?
Well, I believe that and I'm sure Director Gibson can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that everything starts right there as far as the the assessment of their medical needs. And then that would be where the determination is made as far as whether they're treated on site or if they go out by an ambulance or by a sheriff's vehicle.
So, and that's Metro Health people making that decision, obviously. I'm assuming, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
So I guess without having the Metro Health people here, you guys probably wouldn't be able to answer adequately whether or not that might be, the end of the road for some inmates as opposed, well, I don't know if that's a good way to put it. That would be the end of treatment for some inmates as opposed to going that extra step and taking them unnecessarily.
Yes.
Or maybe beyond what is reasonable for an ER visit. I mean, because having kids, I know you can go to ER and you can be there for 3 hours for an earache or something in your eye or something like that, as opposed to when we're thinking emergency situation, you have a cardiac arrest situation or something like that. Obviously, those are no calls. You do what you do and you send them off. Right.
Have to go.
So I'm just thinking maybe in terms of saving costs without giving up quality care, that might be something that they can look at as to whether or not that's something they can do. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
Certainly.
So. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, it doesn't seem like we're too much farther along than we were 2 weeks ago.
No.
I guess to follow up with Councilman Tuma's question, you must have some record there before they would leave as to why they're leaving. I guess that'd be my first question. You must know why they're going to the hospital before the ER picks them up to take them. Don't you have documentation with them?
Not necessarily, because some of that is HIPAA protected information, so they've really never let the deputies know what is actually ailing the inmate. I know just from past experience, we've taken inmates to the hospital who have been infected with the AIDS virus. We've taken inmates to the hospitals who have been infected with tuberculosis, who we've put in the back of our police cars with 2 deputies, and they don't convey that information to us. And we've kind of argued that for a number of years now. Especially with an individual that has tuberculosis, I think it's only fair to the deputies. Now you have a potential exposure there. I think the deputies would kind of like to know that.
I would think that, if I may, that would be a legal question that you should be able to get some answers for not only your protection, but protection of others, and also to answer questions as to whether or not these runs can be managed in-house or outside. I wouldn't think that you would need to have details and names about who's getting what, but just particularly broken arm, we had 3 knees, we had a concussion, whatever it is, names aren't really important. It's what's the reasons why they need to go to the ER. And I thought that was information you were able to get that for us today, but you couldn't get that information?
No, I did not, Ms. Baker. I think the chief was going to possibly elaborate a little bit further on that.
We'd have to get that from Metro themselves.
Okay, you have no paperwork, even generically, to say why those runs are, what is happening, the reasons why, not name attached or even detail, but maybe just generally speaking, why they're going to the ER.
I don't want to say that we don't know. We might not know the full aspect of it, but they might call down to the desk, hey, this guy's got to go to the hospital, he's got chest pains. Or this guy has to go to the hospital, he's been assaulted, or any number of health issues. But it's usually the very basic.
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe it's changed as far as like when someone has communicable disease, as far as tuberculosis and that. Maybe they're giving that information to the deputies now.
The information's not consistent, is what it is. It depends what nurse is working and how much they want to tell us. And a lot of times we have to get that information from a corporal who's working the jail and why they're actually going out.
I would ask, Chair, that because we do have this now cooperation with Metro, we're contracted with them, we're supporting their presence there, that legally maybe we can look into what exactly we can know and not know, and it's certainly not an invasion of privacy or trying to break the HIPAA laws, but it is more of an accountability of what it is that we're responsible for when we make these runs, and perhaps there's other alternatives to taking care of those within in-house if it's something that is not considered an emergency. If we could look into that the next time we speak, to have more of an idea of, I mean, knowledge is everything.
Sure,
understanding
absolutely.
why we're making these runs, and work with Metro and see how much information we're allowed to have up to the point of privacy. I would appreciate that.
So, Council, I just wanted to say I have been in discussions with the prosecutor's office, our representative that works with the jail, and we have had ongoing discussions about what information is available. So just recently, the prosecutor said that we needed to schedule a meeting to iron out this exact thing, because getting information is sometimes a challenge, depending upon the circumstance. So it's already in the works.
Mr. Tuma.
Thank you. And along the same lines, just as far as the HIPAA law goes, you can always obtain consent from the patient, him or herself. Even limited, even if it's a limited consent to specific, emergency run visit or certain, aspects of the injury or such. They can always agree to sign some type of waiver too. I mean, knowingly do so. So that's an option out there too.
Well, it would seem to me that without Metro here, we're really not going to get to too much. So I apologize to everybody for them not being here. I thought very specific about them being here. But that being said, why don't I do this? Rather than bring everybody in around the holidays, why don't I, and if the council president's available and willing, meet with Metro and whomever we need to at the jail to try and iron out some of this stuff. Seems to me what's pretty clear is one side has a feeling about medical intervention in the jail, and the other side has a feeling about medical intervention at the jail. And Metro being new to this and us being new to Metro in this capacity would probably be wise to get everybody in the room, much like we did with the public defender and the administration and the sheriff, to take care of that problem over there. So why don't I try and get time with Dr. Bruner and myself and the sheriff and whomever you want there that has any knowledge about what's going on. Because it seems to me right now we're not getting anywhere, and I don't want to put anybody on the spot and point fingers and say they're not doing what they're not supposed to do. I don't know what I don't know, and I just want to get to a point where we can agree that we need to do what's best for those that are in our care and custody, and what's legitimately best for the taxpayers of Cuyahoga County in the end. But we will not know that today without them being here. So why don't I do that? I'll report back to the committee, and if we get to some consensus, I'll have everybody back and we can discuss that so we can get to the bottom of it. This is a big issue, but I don't think it's an issue that we can't get over, but it is an issue, and it doesn't seem to be getting any better. And I will tell you that the high sheriff and his staff not having these statistics from Metro is troublesome. Maybe that's something we can get through in a private discussion to try and deal with this. Would you be of agreement?
Certainly, Mr. Gallagher. I fully agree with you. And I apologize for not having some of the exact numbers that we're looking for. I'll certainly
we know they've spiked. So
work with my staff to get that and get a full breakdown.
Well, we know they spiked. It could be when we incorporated Euclid and Cleveland, and we don't know.
Sure.
And I don't want to be throwing darts in the dark.
Right.
So why don't I do that? Again, I apologize for having everybody here. This is a little bit of a waste of time. Not your fault, mine. I'm taking that. But let me do that. Let me get to the bottom of it and report back to committee, and we'll go and see where we're at from there. It can only get better, I would imagine.
Certainly.
I think it's having everybody in the same room and hearing everybody out. 'Cause
Correct.
everyone's, I'm sure, got an opinion here,
Sure.
and there's got to be a meeting. Yes, ma'am.
If you don't mind, Chair, we've asked not just one question, but one that may be similar in questions. Do you think it would be appropriate to come up with a list, maybe having our staff help us with a list, so they know exactly what it is that we're going to be asking for, so that there isn't I didn't know you wanted that, and I don't have the numbers with me?
Oh, no, I've actually asked for that.
But I mean that and similar questions. There might be other questions that come up, being we're going to have, I think you're scheduling a Metro meeting in January. Maybe we could do, as we've done in the past, have a list of different questions so that everybody knows where our concerns are.
And that's a good idea, but I have
Okay.
put forward a lot of questions to Metro regarding this issue. They haven't responded yet, but that's fine. I thought they were going to come in with that today, but that's fine.
Yeah, I apologize,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
We just got these this morning, so we have the numbers right in front of us
From?
here. From Metro.
Okay, well, why don't you hang on to those?
Sure.
I'm a little uncomfortable not having them here to
Understood.
explain those, because it could be misconstrued.
I had printed these numbers out from an email that I received from Dr. Bruner just before coming over here. And the only reason I didn't present it was because I wasn't comfortable. I would rather have the doctor presenting it. That way, if there's a question about why they were sent, she'd be able to expound on that a bit more than I could.
Well, let's get in the same room, we'll have that discussion. It'd probably be more conducive to get into middle ground here as opposed to a public display right now. I don't think we're getting anywhere. And then we can bring you all back in and we can, let the world know where we're at and how we're going. I do know that one of the problems is, and I've heard this from the beginning, not having a physician on weekends has been a big issue. And
Weekends, evenings.
We do have to deal with that. We have a specific contract with Metro, and if that's not in there, we're going to have to look at augmenting that, because it seems to me only reasonable that you'd want a physician available 24/7 as the best case scenario when you have that many people in your care and custody. It just seems the bare minimum. So that's something we need to look at, and that's not a Metro issue, that's our issue. I want to be clear about that. So why don't I do that? And I plan on having this next week, and if it becomes obvious to me and the president to call another committee meeting, we will, but I'll absolutely inform everybody what's going on. But I want it to be as easygoing as possible here, because I think we're all coming to the same conclusion. We're just getting there in different ways, and I just don't want to screw up a good relationship that we have with a partner.
Right, and nor do I. Metro plays a big part in this. They're an important partner here, and I think we just need them to be able to answer the medical question aspect of this whole thing, and and then you mentioned the weekend physician, evening physicians, and that. Again, I don't know if that's the cure-all, but I think it could help if there's a doctor on site during those off hours to be able to make some sort of an assessment where it isn't totally on the nurse or the nurse practitioner to be able to do that. So, does
that sound like a reasonable solution? And at least we'll be moving in the direction of getting to that place that we'd all like to be at.
Certainly.
Okay. Again, I apologize. I'm gonna wear the collar on them not being here, but like I say, I thought I was pretty direct. But I'll set up that meeting, and I'll look forward to you all being there if all of you are going to be there. And I appreciate your efforts on the other issues we have with public defender. I'm glad we can get that done, and I appreciate you being there for me on that one, and us for being there. So anything else? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And that was the end of miscellaneous. Anything else? We good? Okay, I'll report back.